Have you ever wondered why some people who are incredibly smart, engineers, doctors, or Nobel Prize winners, can end up broke, while a simple janitor who lived a quiet life can leave behind a multi-million dollar fortune? It sounds like a fairy tale, but it is a documented reality. The difference between these two types of people rarely comes down to how much they know about interest rates, the stock market, or complex financial modeling. Instead, it comes down to how they behave. This is the central premise of Morgan Housel's masterpiece, The Psychology of Money. In a world that treats finance like a branch of physics, full of rules, formulas, and data, Housel reminds us that it is actually a soft skill. It is about your relationship with ego, your sense of enough, and your ability to stay patient when everyone else is panicking. Today, we are going to dive deep into the most transformative lessons from this book to help you rethink everything you thought you knew about wealth. Money is often taught as a math-based field where you put data into a calculator and it tells you exactly what to do. But in the real world, people don't make financial decisions on a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table or in a meeting room where personal history, your unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are all scrambled together. To understand why people do what they do with their money, we have to look past the numbers and look into the human heart and mind. Doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach, even to really smart people. A genius who loses control of their emotions can be a financial disaster. The opposite is also true. Ordinary folks with no financial education can be wealthy if they have a handful of behavioral skills that have nothing to do with standard measures of intelligence. One of the most profound realizations in the book is that no one is actually crazy when it comes to money. We all like to think we are making rational decisions, but the truth is that our financial choices are deeply rooted in our personal experiences. Someone who grew up during the Great Depression sees the world and the stock market very differently than someone who grew up during the tech boom of the 1990s. Your birth year, your hometown, and the economic environment of your youth dictate about 80% of your risk tolerance and your views on how money works. We all think we know how the world works, but we've each only experienced a tiny sliver of it. When you see someone buying a lottery ticket or investing in a highly speculative asset that seems like a bad idea to you, remember that in their head, given their specific life experiences and the pressures they face, that decision might actually make sense. This perspective shifts us from judgment to empathy. It helps us realize that there is no one-size-fits-all financial advice. What is reasonable for one person might be irrational for another. If you were born in a time when inflation was high, you might never trust bonds. If you were born when stocks were stagnant for decades, you might never trust the market. Understanding this helps you realize that your own biases are not the truth, but rather a reflection of your history. To be successful with money, you must learn to distinguish between what is a universal truth and what is just a result of the specific time and place you were raised. By acknowledging that no one is crazy, we can stop fighting over who is right and start focusing on what works for our unique circumstances. We live in a culture that loves to celebrate the self-made billionaire and criticize the lazy failure. However, Housel argues that luck and risk are siblings. They are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. When you see someone like Bill Gates succeed, it's easy to credit 100% of it to his brilliance and hard work. While he is undoubtedly brilliant and hardworking, he also happened to go to one of the only high schools in the world that had a computer in the 1960s. That was luck. On the flip side, for every Bill Gates, there is someone equally talented who was hit by a risk event, a health crisis, a market crash, or a stroke of bad timing that derailed their path. The world is too complex for 100% of your actions to dictate 100% of your outcomes. The lesson here is not to give up, but to be humble in success and compassionate in failure. If you recognize the role of luck, you are less likely to become arrogant when things go well. If you recognize the role of risk, you are less likely to beat yourself up when things go poorly. When looking for role models, don't look at the extreme outliers, the richest people on earth, because their success often involves such an extreme amount of luck that it's impossible to replicate. Instead, look for broad patterns of success and failure. The more common a pattern is, the more likely it is to be applicable to your own life. Focus less on specific individuals and more on general principles that stand the test of time. One of the hardest financial skills to master is getting the goalpost to stop moving. In our modern world, social comparison is a plague. We see a neighbor get a bigger house or a friend get a faster car, and suddenly our own perfectly fine life feels inadequate. This is the trap of never enough. Some of the most successful and wealthy people in history have ruined their lives, engaging in fraud or taking unnecessary risks because they had no sense of when they had reached their limit. They risked what they had and needed for what they didn't have and didn't even really need. Having a sense of enough doesn't mean you are unambitious or that you should stop working. It means realizing that the appetite for more money, more prestige, more power, can be insatiable. If you don't define what is enough for you, your ego will always find someone who has more, and you will spend your entire life on a treadmill of dissatisfaction. Happiness, as the book suggests, is just results minus expectations. If your expectations always rise faster than your results, you will never be happy, no matter how much money you make. The hardest part of the psychology of money is staying satisfied with what you have while still striving for growth, without letting social comparison dictate your self-worth. The most powerful force in finance is also the most misunderstood: compounding. We often hear about Warren Buffett's incredible investing skill, but the real secret to his wealth is time. Buffett started investing when he was 10 years old. If he had started at age 30 and stopped at age 60 like a normal person, he would be worth a tiny fraction of what he is today. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. Compounding is like a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts small, almost invisible, but as it gathers momentum, the growth becomes exponential. The problem is that human brains are not wired to understand exponential growth. We think linearly. We think if we do a little work, we get a little reward. Because compounding takes a long time to show significant results, most people give up too early. They want the big payoff now. They jump from one investment strategy to another, trying to find the hot stock or the quick win. But the most successful investors are those who can stay the course for decades. It's not about making the highest returns in a single year. It's about making pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest period of time. Consistency and endurance are far more important than intensity. If you can master the patience required for compounding to work, you don't need to be a financial genius to become wealthy. You just need to be someone who doesn't get in their own way. There are a million ways to get wealthy: starting a business, inheriting money, or being a high earner. But there is only one way to stay wealthy: a combination of frugality and paranoia. Getting money requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. Staying money requires the opposite. It requires humility and the fear that what you have could be taken away just as fast as you earned it. Housel highlights that survival is the most important word in finance. You have to be able to survive the short-term ups and downs of the market to enjoy the long-term benefits of compounding. Many people get rich and then immediately change their lifestyle, taking on debt and increasing their expenses. They lose the very habits that made them successful in the first place. To stay wealthy, you must accept that your past success doesn't guarantee future results. You need a margin of safety or a room for error. This means having enough cash on hand so that when the inevitable recession or personal crisis hits, you aren't forced to sell your investments at the worst possible time. Being financially unbreakable is the goal. If you can survive the bad times, the good times will take care of themselves. What is the ultimate purpose of having money? Is it to buy a mansion, a private jet, or designer clothes? According to Housel, the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, "I can do whatever I want today." The greatest intrinsic value of money, and this can't be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. Being able to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want, is the highest dividend money pays. Research on happiness shows that once basic needs are met, more stuff doesn't make people much happier. However, having control over your schedule is a huge predictor of life satisfaction. You could have a high-paying job, but if you hate your boss and have no control over your hours, you will likely feel miserable. On the other hand, someone with a modest income who has the freedom to spend time with their family and pursue their hobbies is often much wealthier in the ways that actually matter. Money is a tool to buy your freedom, not a tool to buy things that impress people you don't even like. We often use money as a way to signal our status to others. We buy expensive cars or luxury watches because we want people to think we are successful, smart, and important. But here's the paradox. When you see someone driving a Ferrari, you rarely think, wow, that guy is cool. Instead, you imagine yourself in the car and think, wow, I would look so cool in that car. No one is actually looking at the driver. They are using the driver as a benchmark for their own desires. This is the man in the car paradox. You think that by buying expensive things, you will earn the respect and admiration of others. But in reality, people don't give you respect because of your possessions. They are too busy focusing on themselves. If your goal is to be respected and admired, you are much better off developing traits like humility, kindness, and empathy than you are spending money on status symbols that no one actually cares about. Wealth is what you don't see. It's the cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, and the first-class upgrades declined. True wealth is the assets that haven't yet been converted into stuff you can show off. This leads us to one of the most important distinctions in the book: the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is current income. It's easy to spot. You see someone driving a $100,000 car, and you know they are rich because they had the income to buy it or the credit to lease it. But wealth is hidden. Wealth is the money in the bank, the stocks in the brokerage account, and the equity in the business. Wealth is the options you have for the future. The problem is that we live in a world that celebrates being rich. We are bombarded with images of lavish lifestyles, but we don't see the bank accounts of those people. Many rich people are actually living on the edge with high debt and no savings. They are one paycheck away from disaster. Meanwhile, wealthy people might live in a modest house and drive an old car, but they have the security and freedom that the rich person lacks. To become wealthy, you have to be able to suppress your ego and stop spending money to show people how much money you have. Spending money to show people you have money is the fastest way to have less money. You might think you need a specific reason to save, to buy a house, a car, or for retirement. But Housel argues that you should save just for the sake of saving. Saving is the gap between your ego and your income. You can't control what the stock market does, and you can't control when your company might lay you off. But you can control your ego and how much you spend. Saving money gives you a hedge against life's inevitable surprises. In a world that is becoming increasingly competitive and unpredictable, having a pile of cash is a superpower. It gives you the optionality to wait for a better job, to start a business when an opportunity arises, or to simply not panic when the world seems to be falling apart. Savings without a specific goal gives you options and flexibility, and in the long run, flexibility is what allows you to win. Don't wait for a reason to save. Save because you know that the future is uncertain and that having money in the bank is the best insurance policy you can have. As we wrap up this exploration of the psychology of money, it's important to remember that you don't need to be rational. Being cold and calculated like a robot often leads to burnout or making decisions that don't account for human emotion. Instead, aim to be reasonable. It is reasonable to want to own your home outright, even if the math says you could make more in the stock market. It is reasonable to keep more cash than experts suggest if it helps you sleep better at night. The goal of managing your money isn't to maximize every single cent. It's to live a life that makes you happy and gives you peace of mind. If you understand your own psychology, your history, your ego, your sense of enough, and your need for freedom, you will make better decisions than any spreadsheet could ever tell you. Wealth is not just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about the quality of your life and the control you have over your time. Focus on the behavior, be patient with the compounding, and remember that the best investment you can make is in your own peace of mind. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the psychology of money. Now go out there, manage your ego, and start building a life of true wealth.